Good morning. Hutsquallam, welcome to the traditional territory, the Squamish Ojibwe. I'm John French. I'm the acting mayor for the month of July, and in that capacity, I'll be chairing today's Committee of the Whole meeting. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to review on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. And if you have any concerns, please notify the corporate officer present in the meeting today, and that is Ms. Von Bladeau behind me. And council, just before, Kerri Wells, just over there. I guess I should have looked a little more carefully. I would have realized that's not who's behind me. Council, just before we adopt the agenda, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Glenday for a quick announcement.
Good morning, Council. Nice to see everyone on this lovely July day before the council break. I'm excited to announce our newest GM who's joining the core leadership team today, Pascal St. Louis, who is over there. And Ms. St. Louis will be the general manager of public safety. And I did send out some information, but for the benefit of the public, has a deep background in areas of healthcare, public policy with the federal government, as well as emergency response. So we're looking forward to her working with the district.
Thank you and welcome. Okay, council. So with that, let's adopt this agenda that's in front of us. That's moved by Mayor Herford and seconded by Councillor Pettingill. All those in favor? Motion carries. Item number 3 is up next, and that's staff reports, the Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan Update and Farm and Food Hub Feasibility Report. I'll turn it over to staff.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Jen Stone, Economic Development Officer with the District of Squamish. We're pleased to provide an update on the status of the farm and food work in Squamish, highlighting several exciting projects completed over the last year and seeking support to continue this important work. Presenting today, we have Krystle tenBrink, Executive Director of the Squamish Climate Action Network and Squamish Food Policy Council, Ione Smith from Upland Consulting, and alongside myself. We're joined by members of the public. The steering committee, including farmers, business operators, representatives from the Ministry of Agriculture, and we're hoping some of those will attend online. And if not, this presentation is going to be presented to the SLRD in the next little while. So Claire Dewa from the SLRD, Sarah McJanet, members of the Squamish Food Policy Council are with us, in addition to Gabby Barnes, who is not currently staff, but I'm going to say economic development specialist, who was integral to this work. So we're very pleased to have them in attendance today. The purpose of the report is firstly to update the committee on the Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan Food Systems Initiatives. Collaborations. I think there's something going on with IT, but anyway, thank you. One more. There we go. Sorry. The purpose of the report is firstly to update the committee on the Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan, Food Systems Initiatives, collaborations and achievements in 2023, as well as implementation priorities and the work plan highlights for the 2024-2025 season. Secondly, the Farm and Food Hub Feasibility Report, completed by Economic Development and the Squamish Climate Action Network, is presented for information, along with a request for endorsement for a letter of support for Squamish CAN's application to the Rural Economic Diversification Infrastructure Program, REDIP, and I'll highlight that that's their application for the implementation of the Farm and Food Hub Feasibility Plan. Finally, staff are seeking endorsement for the district to enter into a partnership with Squamish CAN to develop and operate a Squamish Farm and Food Hub. I hand over to Krystle tenBrink.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Good morning. I'm Krystle tenBrink, Executive Director of the Squamish Climate Action Network and the Squamish Food Policy Council, which acts as an arm from Squamish CAN. And so we're here giving our annual update for the Squamish Valley Agriculture Plan. Can you believe it's already been, we are in our 5th year. First off, I'd like to take a thank you to our fourth year of funders in 2023, the Community Gaming Grants, Whistler Center for Sustainability, and Vancouver Coastal Health, Ministry of Agriculture, Community Futures House Sound, Vancouver Foundation, and the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center. So thank you so much to those funders who were able to take that PILT funding from the District of Squamish and SLOD, and we were able to leverage it quite a bit. I'll share that with you shortly. This may look familiar. It's a little bit of a snapshot as to our journey, where we began in 2009. I'd like to just highlight, some of them where a lot of this important work started in 2015 with the endorsement of the food charter, which kind of helped eventually led into the District of Squamish official community plan food policy adoption, and then the Squamish Valley Agriculture Plan initiation. And you can see where the implementations get started in 2020. Next slide. Still a continuation as to the many things that we've been able to do over the last 4 years. And yeah, so in 2023, we were able to support a lot of procurement initiatives as part of a high priority action item. And this included a variety of a particular farm tour. So you can see here, I love this photo because if you know them, then you know. Carlos and Hector here from Lou's Tacos, super excited getting samples from the farm. This was such a wonderful day. We brought 17 different individuals out from 10 different businesses between Squamish, Whistler, Pemberton, and Lillooet. And we met in Pemberton, toured 2 different farms to really hear firsthand from the farmers themselves about how to integrate seasonal planning and menu planning, and how to work with farms if you've never worked with them before. So this is a really important, important engagement in order to remove barriers for people directly supporting each other and purchasers and farmers working together. So yeah, it was a really fun day. And to continue the fun, we hosted a full day event at the Squamish Lillooet Cultural Center with about 70 different participants. And as you can see here, we have people around a circle, and we did a bit of a speed networking session. So each connection had about 4 or 5 minutes to really sort of share a little bit about who they are and what they're up to and where there might be synergies to work together. So this was a lot of fun. It was really loud, maybe a few too many people. Go back once. I just want to highlight that in this space here, we had farmers, restaurants, food providers, retailers, institutions, and policymakers. Whistler Center recently did some evaluating of some of the participants who were there in year 1, 2, as well as folks from the farm tour, and we were able to really learn firsthand about the impact that people felt at those sessions. So we will be continuing them. And another high priority action item is to implement and to secure lands for the purpose of farming. And this can be done in a variety of different ways, through a land trust as an example, but it can also look creatively at public parks, development, schools, and other institutional lands. So I'm really happy to be able to share that in 2023, as you may recall, we've been able to secure a second site for our community farm, which is down Loggers Lane. No, it's down Raven Drive off Loggers Lane as part of the Riverstone townhome development. And I've recently met with the developer, and we are underway with how we're going to get started and remunerate the land and get it ready for, essentially it will be turnkey ready for 2 urban farmers to start farming right in the middle of that neighborhood. So we're pretty excited about that. We were able to help advocate for the school district getting funding towards hiring a school meal coordinator. That funding, as you may recall, had a few different components to it, but one of which is to encourage the schools as they develop school meal programs that they will consider purchasing from BC farms. So we're really excited that as we're building relationships with everyone in the corridor, we're also working first really closely with those institutions to help remove those barriers, as that's often the hardest thing. If you're a small business and cooking for in one space, that's different than 15 schools that you're trying to provide meals for. And our school farm saw its second year of operation. We're really excited to share that sales are going really well. And we were able to partner with the school district in providing 60 families with a sliding scale opt-in weekly farm harvest box program. So the school subsidized this, and you could choose full subsidy or partial subsidy. So we're really excited that that food grown in your neighborhood can go back to the families from those nearby schools. And most recently, we've been able to secure finally a contract after many years with the Squamish Hospital. So starting likely in about a week, we will be selling to the Squamish Hospital from the school farm. And they provide about 300 meals a day. And as you may know, school hospital food is always a little bit interesting. And so we're working with them to try to bring fresh and really rich flavors, especially when they're cooking for the residents of the Hilltop House. So we're super excited to cater what we're growing and also work with other farms to sell to the hospital as well. So it's a big win. Yes, next. Yeah, thanks. And then lastly, I'll just share that we are, because of the school farm model and the uniqueness of it, we're also working with Pemberton Secondary, and they've come down for a visit, and we're encouraged by the work that they're doing and maybe where that might go as well. And I also have, you can go to the next slide. I also have here Miss Erin Eidsvik, as she's known. And lastly, our organization was able to present at the Farm to School BC conference about how we built the school farm and the impact and the lessons learned that it's had. But I'll share with you, I'll let Erin share directly from her experience of teaching the farm studies class over the last 2 years, a few stories of change. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erin Eidsvik. I am a teacher at Howsound Secondary School and specifically the farm studies teacher. So my classroom is legitimately the farm next year, as I do not have one in the classroom. So we are going to make the greenhouse our workspace, which I'm super excited about. So that's one of my students. That's Daisy. Daisy has been an absolute rock star since she started with the farm program 2 Septembers ago now. She worked on the farm and then has now moved into a leadership role with the Agricultural Leadership Program, which changed its name last year, Food and Community Leadership. And they are doing some really cool stuff this upcoming year. We're going to get them working on the farm in the fall, and then my students will take over in the spring when really the manpower is needed. In the classroom, it's so funny to watch these kids come in and be like, oh, I'm going to go wear gloves. And I'm like, okay, sure, go wear gloves if you want to. Or it's like raining and they're like, oh, I don't know if we should go outside today. I'm like, no, we have to. We don't actually have a choice. And throughout the semester, they just kind of blossom into these people of taking care of something else other than themselves, which is really, really cool. They start off a little unique and tough and hard to deal with at times. And then by the end of the semester, just like being able to work through the ground in connection to the place and the land that we live on, and then getting to try the food that they produced with their own hands, they turn into these kids who come back in the summer and working there right now. And they're like, Miss Eidsvik, did we grow that one? I'm like, yeah, you did. You want to come try it? Like, come grab it. And their parents grabbing the CSA boxes and coming to pick them up and sharing stories about how, oh, we tried this new vegetable tonight together. We decided to find a recipe and make it as a group. And it's really, really cool to see them blossom the way they are on the farm in a school setting. Because we know that sometimes students struggle with that. Yeah.
And this may look familiar. We continue to maintain the food asset map, which is also part of the District of Squamish performance in Squamish community performance indicators. And so we're currently doing a huge update of this map right now. As you know, food and farm businesses are always changing hands and closing or moving. And so we're trying to keep up with all of the moving parts. But this is a really wonderful community asset that can be used and shared. That link can be accessed through the Vancouver Coastal Health website. And we're still continuously working on making sure that other websites are hosting this. So when people are new to town or visiting, they will know where different community food assets are. And even though we're halfway through 2024, we've been super busy, still building relationships and doing many moving parts. But a big highlight is we are developing an Indigenous garden in front of the downtown school farm. You may have seen some renovations and some big cleanup happening there. This work has been guided by the Squamish elders, the Indigenous leadership and farm studies class at Howe Sound Secondary. And there's also been new Agri 1 zoning adoption happening as part of SFAP action item 5.4 to update the OCP and zoning bylaws to have it better aligned with the Agricultural Land Commission. And we're excited to welcome some new speakers this fall as part of food and farming workshops and ongoing engagement. This is a bit of a snapshot as to the funding and where it came from for 2023. So for the ongoing continued support with the PILT funding for general implementation of the SFAP, we're able to really leverage that into last year $186,000, which went to supporting all of our various plans and programs. And coming up, well, we'll be talking about it already. So there you go. So just to share a little timeline, I'll shift over now from the general update of the SFAP into the Food and Farm Hub Feasibility Report. And so this report was funded by the Rural Economic Development Infrastructure Program, the District of Squamish, and Community Futures Howe Sound. And this project included 4 key phases. It was a background review, it was engagement, primary engagement, through interviews and surveys. It was a financial feasibility study, financial feasibility component, and governance. And together, these phases presented a holistic approach to implementing the Food and Farm Hub in Squamish, serving as a model for our region. This project was completed by ourselves and the District of Squamish Economic Development Team and Upland Consulting. We are excited to present the completed Food and Farm Hub feasibility plan recommendations. And this project builds on the legacy of several instrumental initiatives and outlines and steps to implement this hub in Squamish as part of the Squamish Valley Agriculture Plan, which is part of Goal 2, which is to improve sector growth and market viability through actions 2.1, 2.3, and 2.4. And 2.5.
So this project builds on several key initiatives to enhance regional food systems and agriculture. These include the recommendations from the Squamish-Lillooet Food Task Force, led by the Whistler Centre for Sustainability between 2018 and 2020, the Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan of 2019, which aims to support agriculture and food systems in the Squamish Valley over the next decade. Additionally, the project builds on recommendations of the Agri-Food Impact Study, which was endorsed in 2022, which measured the agri-food industry's impact on the Squamish economy, while the Emerging Sector Roadmap and Action Plan of 2020 identified craft, food and beverage, and agriculture as emerging sectors in the green economy. Notably, in the first phase of this project, Squamish Can completed an interim report summarising the findings of the engagement phase, which serves as a prelude to the final report. There is significant alignment with the food systems, within the food systems of the OCP, section 26. In particular, I would highlight 26.13 community food hubs, which identifies the objective: integrate food access, infrastructure, food rescue and redistribution services and programs physically and virtually within the community. The policies associated with this objective are A, explore and support social enterprise models such as community food hubs and cooperatives that create a central gathering place for food-based services and activities, education events and celebrations, such as community kitchens with food production, storage, processing, and composting facilities. And B, support emerging partnerships with community organisations to develop a central food hub in the downtown or a similarly accessible area. Second.
Okay, what is a food hub? A food hub is a network of food and farm infrastructure within a region to strengthen the area's local food economy, and it involves collaboration with farmers, organizations, and consumers to aggregate and distribute resources to make food available given in an area. And our project goals are to assess the feasibility of a food hub to determine the target product and services that hub should address, explore governance structures and recommend the preferred approach, recommend infrastructure needs, operational and management needs, and partnership opportunities, and provide an analysis of the financial outcomes and assess risks. And so our overall goal is to promote collaboration among local farmers and food and beverage throughout the food and beverage industry participants, and to explore opportunities to develop a phased hub model approach for the Sea to Sky region. And I'll hand it over now to Ione Smith, who helped us complete the feasibility side of this project. She may look familiar, as she was also part of the Squamish Valley Agriculture Plan, as well as many other plans in the region.
Thank you, Krystle. So in order to accomplish the goals for the project, we took on 7 specific steps. So we did a full review of background materials, and with that information, including all the great engagement work that the Food Policy Council had undertaken, we completed a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats analysis to look at different forms of governance and business models that the Food Hub could take on. We also undertook a review of potential sales and marketing opportunities. We looked at operational business planning, what would be the key costs involved, and what were the risks associated with those. We reviewed the regulations and permitting requirements for a food hub, and we also obtained feedback on the draft report through additional engagement, and then prepared the draft and final feasibility study that you have before you. Next slide, please. So you'll note that in the Food Hub feasibility report, we take a hub and spoke model for the region. And the reason for doing this is to minimize risk overall. So the way a hub and spoke model can work is to look at a phased approach. So undertaking a soft launch, piloting certain specific components of a food hub, and also at the same time building on existing community partnerships and new partnerships. And through that soft launch and pilot stage, building community buy-in to the food hub. And once that's established, really then starting to take that social license and that community buy-in and leverage that support by increasing existing infrastructure and adding to the hub and spoke model. Some of the services that we believe a food hub would do well with offering the local community are listed here. We really felt strongly that there was a lack of cold storage within the region, and so that was one of the highest priority needs that was associated with the food hub model. Online sales and marketing from a collective standpoint was also important. We heard from small scale producers that they are often interested in doing this type of sale online, but that they don't necessarily have the time or the know-how to do so. The way that the food hub would cover its costs is to charge a brokerage fee, essentially, so a markup on the products that would be moving through the food hub on behalf of the producers and the processors. Right now, the majority of small-scale producers and processors are selling directly to clients and customers, usually through the farmers market or through deliveries, and that comes at a huge cost to them. So based on our research, it did look like even with the brokerage fee, there would be a high buy-in by small-scale producers and processors because it would alleviate their time and their costs associated with doing those direct sales themselves. So some of the partners and collaborators that we identified are listed here. I'll focus a little bit more on the role that local governments can have. Primarily what we found is that local governments such as the District of Squamish could help to support a local food hub by designating infrastructure and space through development permit applications, through community contributions and things of that nature. And so there's a great opportunity for the district to become a key partner in the establishment of the food hub, particularly with an infrastructure component. Another option is to take public spaces and offer them at low or no cost to a nonprofit food hub. We also identified, of course, important opportunities to partner with local First Nations, educational institutes, provincial agencies. Krystle just mentioned the new relationship being developed with the local hospital. So there's a lot of opportunities to also combine and meet objectives that the community might have around poverty risk reduction and household food insecurity as well. So who will use the food hub? Well, I already mentioned a little bit about small scale producers. The targeted user group would be from Squamish to Pemberton. We didn't include Lillooet at this point in time because the sense was to establish a food hub really for the more co-located communities of Pemberton, Squamish, and Whistler. But we wanted to be able to include them at a later stage potentially. These would be new, micro scale, which is essentially one sole proprietor or two business owners, small and medium farms, and food processors. Food and beverage enterprises are also an important component, as are startups, for-profits, social enterprises, etc. The latest census of agriculture noted that there were about 117 farms in the SLRD. These are self-identifying farms, and Squamish Food Policy Council's asset map looks at the region and indicates that there's about 40 or 41 small farms and food processors. At the same time, the Squamish Agri-Food Impact report, I believe, allocated or indicated there was 135 small businesses associated with agriculture, food, and beverages. And so these are obviously fluid numbers that change all the time, but it does indicate the core group that would likely be part of the food hub to start up. And so we also looked at who would purchase food from a food hub. Obviously, there's a lot of demand by Sea to Sky residents. As you can tell from the farmers market, it's always busy. There's always a huge demand for local foods from stores, locally grocers, restaurants, etc. There's also a lot of visitors and tourists. I believe within the District of Squamish, there was $8 million spent on groceries per month by residents in the past year, which is $96 million a year. So if you even just had a 1% penetration of that market, it's nearly $1 million a year. So there's a potential to really try and focus in on a small subgroup of local food supporters who have the will and value system around really wanting to support local businesses and healthy local food and focusing on that target audience for the first few years of the food hub. Next. So how is this going to be implemented? Well, I talked a little bit about a pilot scale or soft launch already. So this is really about starting with some key assets, building on an online platform, looking at a brand. So there's already a Sea to Sky grown brand out there, potentially looking at expanding that and using that by the food hub. Cold storage, this is a huge need in the region. So looking at mobile cold storage units and bringing them into different parts of the corridor, starting in Squamish. And then using multiple nodes. Once the desire and use grows and there's that community buy-in, looking at expanding it slowly and leveraging the label. And then also looking at potentially developing a for-profit co-op model for the members who are going to be selling to the food co-op. We identified that as a potential benefit as well. And then later on, at a later stage, looking at potential for value added and food retail opportunities. So potentially building a cafe that focuses on selling products from the food hub, etc.
So the district may play a supportive role as a project partner to implement a Squamish-based farm and food hub through developing a partnership agreement and by potentially leveraging district-owned lands and facilities. Please note, though, that the project is not contingent on the use of district-owned lands or facilities. The involvement does, however, create an opportunity to activate underutilised facilities and spaces for the mutual benefit of the agri-food sector and the District of Squamish. So the timelines and next steps: the interim report is complete, the final report is complete, and we are at implementation stage. To effectively execute the recommendations put forth in the Farm and Food Hub feasibility report and frame roles, provide seed funding to leverage grant opportunities and maximise utilisation of district resources for the purposes of activating a food hub, it is advised that Squamish can and the District of Squamish establish a formal partnership agreement. It is proposed that the partnership agreement will span over 4 years from 2024 to 2027, and the district's economic development officer will take the lead on the partnership for the district.
So a little bit about the application that we'll be applying for. The Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, also known as REDIP, is a grant launched by the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Development and Innovation. This is its third and likely final round, and Squamish Can will be the lead applicant. And we will be to advance the establishment of the Food and Farm Hub and put into action the recommendations outlined as part of this plan. We plan to seek funding through the REDIP stream with the potential of up to $1 million. The grant reimburses up to 80% of eligible expenses, and 10% of the lead applicant's funding contribution can be paid through cash or in kind. And project activities may encompass activating underutilized district spaces for food aggregation, development, and identifying district lands suitable for cold storage units, etc. The proposed project activities detailed in the application will align with the hub implementation recommendations. And we are requesting a letter of support from the district and highlighting that you folks would be a key role in the partner and for the REDIP application, which closes middle or end of October of 2024, with acknowledgements of who's been successful in March of 2025.
In closing, we thank you for receiving the Squamish Valley Agricultural Plan update and the Farm and Food Hub feasibility report, and request that you consider endorsing a letter of support for Squamish Can and the application to REDIP, and consider endorsing staff to enter into a partnership agreement with Squamish Can to implement the Squamish Farm and Food Hub. Thank you.
Council, questions? Councillor Anderson?
One of the potential partners or collaborators that's mentioned in the report is Capilano University. We have, I think it was earlier this year or late last year, concluded a memorandum of understanding with Capilano University, between the district and the university, and it emphasizes economic development. I'm wondering, perhaps you've had already conversations or explored things with the university, but I wanted to understand specifically what are the opportunities involved there, or potential opportunities. Is it campus, land and facilities, faculty, specializations they have in their academic program, or student projects, or all of the above? Can you elaborate a little bit further on what the opportunity of that collaboration may be with the university?
Yeah, thank you for your question. So through Gabby Barnes, she was able to connect ourselves and actually Marin, who is the school meal coordinator at the district, or at the school district of 48. And it looks like, you know, they're getting ready to welcome a small cohort of people onto campus for next year, and they want to provide some food services. But currently they have quite a lot of, a huge amount of food service spaces, kitchen space, and et cetera, that's underutilized, especially perhaps in the next few years, until they kind of get the ball rolling and have more enrollment up there. And so we've sort of been supporting them a little bit and helping get the word out about they have a request for proposal or something like that for providing food services out there. We did talk about the general needs of Squamish and how we might be able to work together, and they seemed very open to just continuing conversation as as opportunities come up and how we might work together. We have also connected a little bit with some faculty up there, and I did a tour for one of their classes already from North Van on different food assets in Squamish. So I get the sense that there's a lot of energy to be a part of the community. Yeah, so ongoing opportunities and connection.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Councillor Hamilton?
Thanks very much. And I've heard cold storage requirements from several people in the community. What does the food hub look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And what do you envision as the district's involvement in the food hub in 5 or 10 years? How does that look?
Yeah, so the vision from 5 years from now is that we've secured physical kitchen space, perhaps a front of house opportunity for sales, like an aggregation space for sales of either agri-food products or farm fresh products. This space may also include an internal or external cold storage for aggregation. So we can have an online platform that makes it really easy for both businesses, institutions, and individual families to purchase food. There's many models like this, such as the South Island Farm Hub out of Victoria, BC. And so having both in person and an online platform can really serve the multiple needs of the community. A huge priority, as you mentioned, is the cold storage. So we envision that there's a cold storage and freezer space spot in Squamish, as well as in Pemberton, that act as a centralized distribution space for pickup and drop off, whether it's direct sales or whether it's through an online platform. And in terms of district involvement, I really see that as leases to use space for the cold storage areas, potential underutilized kitchen space, or potential front of house space that also meets your needs as well. And anything else to add?
I think you really captured it well. I think the only other thing we talked about was potentially helping out with permitting for utility hookups for things like energy, for the cold storage units and things like that from the district.
And of course, the letters of support as we go after funding and such.
Follow up?
So I'm going to pose a challenge here, a challenging question. So one of the things that we as a municipal government shouldn't be doing is directly supporting business. And so, and I know there's lots of areas that's a very big spectrum, right? And there's lots of space in there. How do we navigate this food hub, the existence of a food hub, with the possible perception that we're directly supporting some businesses and maybe not others who perhaps already have maybe somebody has a farm stall and they're running a farm stall? How do we justify, or how do we see that potential conflict?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. The partnership agreement that's proposed is with Squamish Can, and it would be put to council, and I would also check with legislative services on the nuances of this, but it would be Squamish Can's responsibility to manage those relationships with the businesses, to go through a selection process for who is using the food hub spaces, and how that is implemented. There's potential for the food hub to provide ongoing revenue to the local not-for-profit Squamish Can and Squamish Food Policy Council. And so with that in mind, I think we would bypass the conflict with regard to support the community charter. Yeah.
I might just add that if the district's role is to help foster strengthening our food system that also has huge impact as we talk about emergency planning. There's all these relationships that already exist. I think this has been demonstrated time and time again in Pemberton, even with fires and such, when it comes to responding to ensuring that people and animals are safe. I know we don't have a ton of livestock here. However, I do think in terms of there's a lot of avenues that it does help support in terms of perhaps we provide kitchen space for meals that are being made and that are being provided by the school district to students. So there's a lot of social benefit when it comes to that. I think that by supporting food and farm businesses, you're supporting a bigger holistic strengthening of a food system and also ensuring that nutrition is increased and that meals are being provided. So I do believe that there's quite a lot of social impact as well.
Council, we budgeted about 5 more minutes for this topic, so we want to get to a motion as quickly as we can. Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton got at the main thing I wanted to ask about. So glad we're putting some thought into it. I think supporting this sector makes sense for food security and equity and a lot of reasons. But yeah, navigating that private public pieces may require a bit of additional attention. The other thing, I didn't see a lot of a mention of the Activity 55, what in my mind is still a kitchen space, but I don't actually recall what infrastructure is left there. And I'm just wondering if staff can speak to the readiness or the status of that space.
Through the chair, thank you for the question. We have not confirmed use of any district facilities or assets at this point. However, we have been looking at the Activity 55 as a potential opportunity. One of the outcomes, if the funding application for REDIP is successful, the proposal would include an upgrade to the equipment and facilities at the 55. It's currently a workable space, but in terms of the space is almost ideal, but it's just a little aged. And so some of the things in it need upgrading. And so that's how we would potentially, should the idea that the 55 is used for this farm and food hub implementation be supported, that's how we plan to move forward with that.
And just for my own interest, like, is there any equipment left there? It's just the space, like there are some fridges and stuff?
There are cookers and fridges in situ. There's a cold storage area in the space. Yeah, like a cold storage room, if you like. Yeah.
It's fully equipped. Yeah, we had a tour of it. It's well stocked. I do believe there was an assessment not that long ago done on the infrastructure of the equipment and what it would require in order to bring it to fruition and make it operatable and safe.
Okay, great. Council, are we ready to contemplate a motion on this? Mayor Herford.
I'd like to move the staff recommendation.
Oh, excellent. Is there seconded by Councillor Anderson?
And thank you. I had lots, my questions that I have lots of questions about all the things that you're doing, but not critical to this. So I know we'll have another opportunity to chat, but thank you so much for all the work that's really led to this point. I really, it's led to really a change that you can feel in the community as I move around. And as we talked to our youth, it was great to see Daisy in the slides, and she's also a member of our youth council, and often told stories of being on the farm. So yeah, very impactful to the community so far, and I think this is an important step that we've been hearing about sort of conceptually for a long time. So it's great to see this sort of starting to trying to figure out a different way to say it besides crystallize. So, but thank you. So happy to support and look forward. Hopefully we have a successful application.
A couple of things occur to me in considering your presentation and the reports and previous presentations and reports is that we have in what you've achieved here an example for other green economy sectors that we've identified in our economic development strategy. And in that, what occurs to me is most important is the example of the organizational development path that you pursued and the partnerships that you've identified. And there's lots of lessons here for other sectors. The second thing that occurs to me is, and having accompanied a number of growers looking for land, is that we should be considering agriculture and food production in our pursuit of industrial land solutions. And we are, of course, trying to optimize ALR lands, but they're in short supply, and a number of growers are interested particularly in greenhouse production in industrial land. And so they're part of our industrial land dilemma. And we should really identify that as agriculture is part of our among our stakeholders in pursuing industrial land planning and strategy. Thank you.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thanks very much. I'll certainly be speaking in support of this motion. I think that the District of Squamish partnership is a great example of how the District of Squamish can help to put together sort of that anchor to allow our community to express itself and grow and flourish, right? And that pun was not intended, actually. And I'm a very big supporter of partnership agreements, doing this sort of thing where the district leverages our community, where our community wants to be active and activate. I just want, when I look towards, I look forward to seeing the partnership agreement, and I hope there's some intention put towards this, delineating this line between district support of business and district support of a sector. Okay, thanks very much.
Councillor Greenlaw.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. Thank you so much for all your hard work. And I'll just kind of echo some of Councillor Hamilton's statements. I think these partnership agreements are so important, and it's really a great way to watch to aid our community and watch it thrive. And nutrition and understanding where your food come from are such important parts of life. I really enjoyed hearing about all the interfacing with schools and teaching kids the love of agriculture and a deep understanding of plant systems. It's just so important for people to have more connections with their food sources. And it's good to know that you're supplying food for the hospital and our hospice patients as well. It's just so important to have that good nutrition at those stages of your life. And of course, food security is of the utmost importance in these times of changing climate. So I just wanted to say that I fully support your initiatives and I really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Yeah, just also echo my support. I think there's some really exciting things here as long as we can navigate the private public. I do think there's a huge amount of community value and interest in supporting the sector. And I just, the more we can make our spaces alive and full of food and growth, the better. And really excited to hear about the outcomes from the programming at the schools is really exciting. Some of the knock-on effects of that connection to what we grow and being part of sort of our own health and the community health is just really exciting. So thank you, and excited to see how this rolls out.
And for me, speaking in favor of the motion, the work that's gone into this effort is just impressive. The vision created and the plan suggested to build a farm and food hub, it's clear, it's decisive, and it's detailed. The plan addresses food security, as we've heard, and it just makes sense for us to increase the amount of food produced and made available close to home. So I fully support pushing this initiative forward. And with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much, Ms. Isaac, for joining us, and Ms. Smith.
Thanks, everyone.
The next item on our agenda is titled Corporate Policy Modernization Project. And Ms. Wells, are you, you have a presentation for us? Okay, very good. We'll transition over. Does anybody know what that beeping is? And Councillor Greenlaw, don't mess with me.
Good morning, Council. I'm Kerri, Director of Corporate Administration. I go by the pronouns she and her. And with me is Kim Martin, Director of Human Resources, and we're here today to present Corporate Policy Modernization Project. And Ms. Martin is here to speak to some of the human resources policies that she's been reviewing and updating over the last couple of months. So I'm just going to do a quick overview of the report basically, and then hand it over to Kim to talk about the policies. Oops. So why are policies important? They are the foundation of good governance along with bylaws. They mandate, specify, prohibit conduct to enhance the organization's mission. They ensure compliance with expected standards and applicable laws and regulation. They promote fairness, consistency, and operational efficiency, and they reduce operational risk. They also support good decision-making for council and for staff. There are different types of policies. They're categorized as council policies, which are the legislative, typically externally focused policies. We also have the internally focused policies, which are administrative policies. And then divisions and departments may have their own policies and procedures related to the activities of that specific department. For a little background, we've started doing an initial scan. We've located approximately 150 plus corporate policies. Melissa the other day kindly gave me a binder with a bunch of printed policies dating way back. So we are in the process of determining if any of those have been rescinded. Sure, they likely need to be updated. So we are just starting to undertake that process right now. It's unclear at this point when the last comprehensive review of policies was undertaken. Can't find anything in SharePoint, but there could have been something in an older system. So an initial scan has identified that some policies and some governance bylaws appear to be outdated, need to either be rescinded, updated, or consolidated. We need to more clearly identify between administrative and council or legislative policies. We need to differentiate between policies, procedures, guidelines, and standards. Some of the policies are written more as procedures and not policies, and they should be categorized as procedures, not policies. There's a lot of outdated references to old legislation, position titles, departments and divisions. And many of the policies are created using different templates and inconsistent format and structure. So one of the deliverables will be a corporate policy framework. This will provide a reference for staff who develop, approve, and implement corporate policies or direct operational activities. And policy tools will include a classification structure, templates, guides, procedures, policy development and approval flowchart, and formal review periods. So the timeline, we have estimated this will take us probably till about Q2 2028, given the amount of policies there are. And we intend to come forward with quarterly reports to council to facilitate a phased update of the complete set of corporate policies and governance bylaws. And I know you probably can't read the little timeline there, but just gives an overview of what we're planning for each of the phases. And there's more detail on that in the terms of reference in the report. So next steps though, finishing off Q4 and then into Q2 2025. These are the policies that we intend to bring forward. along with the governance bylaws. And that's the next step. So before I hand it over to Kim or Ms. Martin, do you have any questions about the project?
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, I believe most of these are actually like policies and not bylaws. And so is there any risk to the degree that we have these old policies that we're not following, or maybe because we can't, but, or are we sort of, because they're just policies, we're okay in that sense?
Well, there's not really a risk as long as people are using common sense in terms of following current practices and procedures. So I haven't noticed anything that would be problematic in the interim, but we will categorize the policies with the appropriate staff into categories of high priority, medium, and low, so that we do bring up policies that we think might pose a risk if they aren't updated. And we'll make sure that those are the first ones that we address.
Councillor Anderson.
Thank you. It might sound like a mundane question, but I'm curious about where policy documents or how they are kept and stored. Where have they been found? I note that the list of policies that are offered to us here goes all the way back to just after the Municipal Hall fire of 1975. But is there a part of the project a strategy for physical maintenance and protection and storage of such administrative policy documents?
Yeah, that's a great question. Previously, they were kept in a binder, like most municipalities had hard copy binders of policies. Before I arrived, they've created a SharePoint site where all of the policies are currently located. The binder that Melissa has provided to me has some additional policies in it. I'm hoping that those have actually been rescinded and they're just old paper copies of policies. They're not currently in the SharePoint site, so I'm assuming that's that the SharePoint site was updated with the current policies, but that's where they will be maintained, is on an electronic SharePoint site.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Believe it or not, I enjoy this kind of stuff. I engaged in a in a policy review for a former employer, combing through everything. One of the questions I have here is how do we define the line between policy or procedure that needs to be presented to and discussed and approved by council and something that doesn't? Because clearly there's a lot of stuff within the district that doesn't need to come to council. How is that line defined?
Typically, council policies are more of the external facing policies, or they relate to council in particular. So policies such as ones that might do with snow clearing or parking or, park use, those types of policies would be council or legislative policies. Internally focused would be policies that sort of dictate or provide expectations around employee behavior or actions. They have to do with benefits. I don't know if you have anything to add around that, but that would be the typical delineation. Council or legislative policies are obviously approved by council. Administrative policies are approved by the CAO with the input of staff and the CLT, corporate leadership team. Yep.
I would say operational issues probably land on the desk of Ms. Glenday, and governance issues land in council chambers. That would be another way I would distinguish between the two.
Ms. Glenday.
If I can jump in as well, the one exception that we do have as council approved and legislative is what we're bringing forward is the total compensation. And the purpose of that is a check and balance so that the CAO doesn't have sole discretion on compensation of the organization, and that council endorses that as well.
Yeah, and a follow-up, I think the delineation makes sense, but I think that we all know that there's gray zones in all of this. And I think even the policy we have on our desk here, right? the paid on-call firefighter compensation policy it's checked as a legislative council approved policy, but it's to establish a policy that governs compensation. So that, to me, those two things seem, and I'm not being, this isn't like a critical question. I'm just identifying this as a piece that I'm confused by, and I know that there's probably a good reason for the uncertainty.
So I believe, as Ms. Glenday just noted, that involves compensation. So it also involves budget. And so it comes before council as a legislative or council policy.
Thanks. Yeah, and I know we're not going to have a clear definition to move forward and all that. And I think as council, we just need to keep in mind that there's a lot of stuff that happens operationally that Linda and her team know better, that Ms. Glenday and her team know better than we do on how to function. My second question, and this is more of a curiosity, how do you plan on putting in place something that will make it easy to continue to update, right? One of the challenges with policies is one policy points to another policy, and then you don't know. You change policy A points to policy B, you change policy B, but you didn't know that policy A pointed to it. And so you end up with these missing links or double links. Do you have a plan for negotiating that?
Well, the hope would be that the policies are standalone policies, and if they actually relate to each other, they might be consolidated, as Ms. Martin has done with a couple of policies already. We will have a tracking sheet and a timed review period for all of the policies. So if there are policies that relate to each other, I guess we would just perhaps have them on the same schedule for updating to make sure that they're aligned.
One of the things I've seen, and I don't know if it's best practice at all, is like it's almost like treat them like academic papers where you have citations and references. So this policy, and you have a list of references, which policies it references, and then you have a list of policies which cite that policy attached on the policy itself. So each one you have both connections to and connections from the policy physically as part of the policy. Anyways.
And the policies do have references at the end if they refer to legislation or procedures or that type of stuff. So,
Councillor Greenlaw.
Thanks. Through the chair, I was just wondering if this work was going to involve any assessment of whether or not existing policies and bylaws could be inequitably applied. Like, if they can exhibit a bias in terms of like gender, racial equity, or accessibility.
that's a very good question. And I actually was just speaking to Keely about a proclamation policy and flag raising policy. And so the IDEA committee is actually reviewing those two policies, which would be new policies actually. So they're providing input into the creation of those policies from that perspective. And we can certainly review the policies with that in mind, as well as keeping in mind reconciliation and how that applies. So yeah, it's a full scale. It's going to be quite a bit of work, and just taking them and looking at them from all kinds of different perspectives and subject matter expertise input and all of that. But yeah, that's a great point.
Thanks.
There's more presentation, yes?
Thank you. Good morning, Council. So I have the human resources bucket. I am the first out of the gate on this one. I may have pushed Ms. Wells a little forward in her timeline by bringing mine forward, but I have bucketed them into various categories for review. So the first bucket that I have are a bucket that I call the deletion bucket, and I hope you enjoyed a trip through memory lane, looking at papers that look like they were typed on a real typewriter with probably copy paper between them as they were typed to create the copy, and smoking policies where you could smoke in a regular meeting but not in the special meeting, or vice versa. But I feel like those policies have either served their purpose and are past their due date, They've been incorporated into legislation like the Tobacco Control Act, or they have been immersed into other administrative policies that currently exist. And so that first bucket, I feel like you have the rationale beside them for why I'm proposing that they be rescinded. But unless you have questions about those, that's my presentation on those. The second bucket I have is current legislative policies that I say properly belong in the administrative bucket, much to Councillor Hamilton's comment. I would have normally suggested, quite honestly, that the total compensation and all of the compensation buckets also reside under Ms. Glenday, but I feel like with the approval of budget and with the time and the actual amount of money involved in all of those labor discussions, it's important that those policies reside within the legislative framework. So the ones that I'm proposing moving purely to administrative are the code of conduct and the exempt staff 9-day fortnight, because those are purely operational policies, involve purely staff members. Actually, the other purpose of moving them under Ms. Glenday is so that they can be updated more frequently and we can stay on top of any updates that need to happen more quickly. So those are the two that I feel are purely administrative, actually operational, belong under the purview of the CAO. My next bucket is the fire services policy, which normally I wouldn't bring forward, but I have Chief Foote here if there are any questions specific to it. The main purpose of bringing this one forward is that the old policy refers to a CUPE wage. It is a CUPE wage that is being applied to our paid on call firefighters. And the confusion that arises by having something negotiated, voted on, and passed by a union for which these people are not connected doesn't make sense and causes a lot of confusion. And so that was the primary purpose of moving this policy forward. So we have taken that language out completely, and we are suggesting that Chief Foote and the GM of Public Safety will decide probably in December of every year what that wage rate will be based on things like COLA, what the IAFF have negotiated. They will bring that forward, they will present it to payroll, and that will be the payroll amount for paid on call firefighters from January 1st every calendar year. There are obviously a number of other changes to the policy, most significantly the title. We no longer have volunteer firefighters, we have paid on call firefighters, and so we cleaned up all of the language with respect to that as well. Are there any questions with respect to that policy?
Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, on this one, with respect to the budget versus the compensation, yeah. The timing, so how would it work? The council approves a budget, a total budget for the fire department, or for whatever line items there are in the fire department. We do that in December, and then presumably that's, the fire chief's prediction or assessment or anticipated salary would be included in that budget moving forward, so that we would be effectively approving the salary by approving the overall line item. Is that true?
Good morning, Aaron Foote, Fire Chief with the District of Squamish. Yeah, that would be the appropriate way to bring that forward. Yes, through budget.
Councillor Anderson, you looked like you were, okay. Councillor Penningham.
Yeah, just looking for clarity on the code of conduct policy, because we did a lot of code of conduct work as a council, and my mind is focused on the council aspect of that. And so I've sort of lost track that there was a second, or we're splitting apart what we have. And I'm just sort of, I mean, I think there are definitely nuances where there'd be differences. I would expect there to be, in terms of principles, at least in values, a lot of overlap, I guess. So just wondering if you can speak a little bit to the distinction and between the two, and how we keep alignment where I presume we'd actually want a fair bit of alignment between a council and a staff code of conduct and conflict of interest policy.
Through the chair, yes, and we have that alignment through our values. And so through our vision and our values, we would align all of our policies with respect to that. If I understand, council conflict of interest provisions, for instance, are legislated versus we need to actually have policy about conflict of interest for all of our employees working in local government. So that would be a huge component of the code of conduct moving forward. The current code of conduct is quite out of date. In fact, the actual signage and branding is out of date on the policy. And so we would be modernizing that language, but yes, keeping it aligned with the values of the organization, keeping in mind all of the conflict of interest related to local government, and just creating something that is specifically for staff. So council have their own, and this would be specifically for all other staff in the organization.
Yeah, thanks. And I just sort of note, this for me is a bit of a strange area because we do work together as individuals. And so that's one in particular where it seems intuitively you'd want a particularly strong degree of alignment because we are having conversations and there's, a lot of the sort of hierarchical and power dynamic things and so on. So yeah, just a bit of a comment of that one is an area where it seems to me, yeah, we'd really want to think about alignment between those policies.
If I can add, you're about to hear about the respectful workplace policy, which applies to everyone, including council, which is why it remains legislative. So I think that might be the one you're thinking of.
Council, can we move on? Go ahead.
So the fourth and final bucket is my new and amended group. And that group includes the respectful workplace policy, which I was just speaking about. It is neither new nor amended. And the reason that we are here is because it is required under WorkSafe legislation that we review this every year. We recently, in the last few months, had a standing order come from WorkSafe, who received a copy of our policy, received our procedures, reviewed our training with respect to a respectful workplace, and gave us a glowing recommendation that we were completely compliant. So when you get those words from WorkSafe BC, you don't touch your policy. So I'm not suggesting any changes to the policy. We will just amend, hopefully, and approve. And then next year we'll be back and we'll decide if we need to make changes at that point. But having received that commendation really from WorkSafe, I think we just roll forward for another year with that one. What else do I have? COVID-19 vaccination policy. So this policy it's not out of date. The actual content of the policy remains accurate and valid. There's just a lot of language in the policy because it was written in the height of the pandemic about how important this initiative, that we're in the process of having a global pandemic. And so what we've done is delete the paragraphs, break it down to its pure purpose. We've lived through the pandemic now. We know COVID-19 is an ongoing issue, but we don't need a lot of the more expansive language around what a pandemic is and why it's so important to follow these policies. We've also updated language, which surprisingly is old, but it's old. Like we don't have vaccine cards anymore and we don't have proof of vaccination anymore. And so those things have been removed from the policy just to update it and make it more current. I have also, to Councillor Hamilton's earlier point, deleted the part that refers to the vaccination appointment policy because that is an administrative policy under the purview of Ms. Glenday. And by having it in two places, you do sometimes miss the opportunity if you update one and don't update the other. So it is a standalone policy. There's no need for its reference in this policy because it's standalone and we can then update it and deal with it as we want in that forum. So that's the COVID-19 vaccination policy. Then there is the brand new and very exciting supplementary employment insurance benefit plan. So this was recently negotiated in the QP collective agreement, and we are now implementing this for exempt staff. There are slight differences. The amount of time is the same, 16 weeks. The percentage of wage is the same at 75%, but wages are capped. So exempt employees make more money than CUPE employees, and to be fiscally responsible, we have capped the wages at 120,000. So anyone making more than 120,000 will only make 75% of $120,000. It felt like the right thing to do given the range of our wages in the exempt categories. The other big change is that if an employee goes off, receives these benefits, and then fails to return to work, they will be required to pay back all of the benefit received. It is a significant benefit. It is a huge financial impact to the organization. And an employee is required to return and continue to work for local government in order to be in receipt of that benefit. And if they don't, they are required to pay it back. I would love to have also implemented that in the CUPE agreement, but that is much more difficult to do in unionized environment, and no other unionized agreements have a payback plan versus all of the exempt examples I've looked at all have a payback plan. So that's the difference between the one that you saw during bargaining and the one that's being proposed here. And then finally, the last one is the total compensation policy. There's a few purposes for this. One is to amalgamate two policies that make sense as a compensation policy. The other is to highlight for people that it's not just salary. As you know from budget, benefits are a huge load on salary. And it's important for everyone to recognize that the benefit of having a robust benefit package is significant. And it is a huge piece of the compensation that we provide to our employees. So by tying them together into a single policy, I think it makes it more real for people what their total compensation package looks like versus just a wage package. Really, the changes are limited as far as the actual content. There are better definitions. It is better defined. If you are a particular type of employee, you can find yourself within the policy to see what you receive. It is also the policy where we have removed our because CUPE get it, we get it. So there's only one reference to that left in this policy, and that's with respect to group health and benefits, group health and welfare benefits, because unions are incredibly good at negotiating those benefits. And it would be, I think, wrong for the management group who manages those staff to not also receive that level of benefit. But outside of that, I feel like the management team should see themselves as a separate team and not as dependent on what CUPE negotiates to get their level of compensation. So all other references to CUPE have been eliminated, and the goal is to create a compensation package to recognize their hard work, their accountability, their responsibility. The big change is to vacation. So the old language was whatever CUPE got, exempt staff got. And the new vacation schedule breaks out vacation into different allotments based on years of recognition. So some people come in with greater recognition than others, and then they progress through the stages. And so there is a change to those. You might remember in the CUPE agreement, there is a reference to 4.4 vacation weeks, which is, I think, crazy, but it obviously happened during negotiation. There was a money limit, and that was the best they could do, and that's where they got. We've taken 4.4 weeks out and just made it 5 weeks, so that it makes sense when you get a contract that says these are the weeks of vacation that you get. So that's the change to, that's the big change to the total compensation policy. Questions?
Council? Councillor Hamilton, and I'm handing the chair over to you for a moment. I need a quick break. Go ahead.
Thanks very much. For the, sorry, my mind just, taking over chair just distracted me for a moment. when we report the Sophie report, we report the salary in the Sophie report, correct? Yeah. Or is it total compensation?
It's salary. Yeah. And then any additional expenses that an employee has benefited from. So like professional development, travel, et cetera.
And so the total cost of employment is something different from just salary. Is there anywhere that we report, not on a specific individual, but as a general class, like a class of employee, or statistically, what our cost of employment is compared to our salary? Like, here's the salary and here's the cost of employment. Do we do that anywhere?
In terms of the financial statements, you can see the total cost of employment, but I don't believe we actually provide the comparison so that you could look at the percent that's the benefit burden. And that's a terrible word, but that's the technical term, is the payroll burden. And the other part to recognize too is that it's never an absolute number, right? Because it depends on the salary, what the percentage is. But the overall number could be something we could provide to council to demonstrate that cost.
Okay, thanks. That was more for my understanding of what we report and how we report it. Yeah, thanks.
Council, I'll just point out that we're 6 minutes over on this topic. And is the presentation complete now? Okay, so general questions. Anything, Council? I have one. I think you maybe touched on it in the discussion around the 4.4 and shift over to 5 weeks. So it jumped out to me, the annual vacation information, page 4 of the policy, which is page 62 of the staff report, indicates 3 weeks of vacation after a year of service. And I'm old school. I always think 2 weeks. So is a shift to 3 weeks a new normal now?
And there is no shift. So for QP employees, the entry level vacation is 2 weeks. For exempt employees, the entry level has always been 3 weeks.
Great. Council, anything else? We have a motion recommended from staff. And are you moving that, Council Hamilton?
Yeah, I'll move the staff recommendation.
And it's seconded by Councillor Herford. Would you like to speak to it as the mover?
Thanks very much. So a lot going on in this motion, really. From I firmly support the modernization project. I think it's really important that we have a clear idea of what all our policies are, so that those people in our organization and those people who support our organization, i.e. our taxpayers, can clearly understand how we function and how we what our policies are. So I absolutely encourage the modernization. And regarding the individual policies, I think this conversations about compensation and vacation time, I think this is a very interesting piece where we're going to have to continue to navigate slightly gray areas where we're talking about vacation compensation, a benefit, not a compensation, a benefit within a much larger motion. But I do think that the benefits proposed here, both for the exempt employees and the shift to the paid on-call firefighter compensation policy, makes sense. So thanks very much.
Mayor Herford.
Yeah, thank you for all the work on this and for not running away when you grasp the full context of the work ahead. So I do appreciate that larger time frame for the additional touch points. And it was an interesting journey through time as we look back at some of the policies that were there. So I think all these updates were absolutely reasonable, and I look forward to those next steps, as those big dusty binders need to be dug through and make sure they're still relevant and looked at through our modern lens of reconciliation, diversity, equity, inclusion, and so on. So I'm happy that that's underway and look forward to next steps.
Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, really appreciate this work, and I value being able to go on to Civic Web and sort of have a look at what our actual policy states, and you know, every once in a while there's something missing, and so I'm really glad that we're going through all this and getting rid of the stuff that's no longer needed, and updating everything. You know, just on some of the discussion around compensation, I do wonder if there's a room, and maybe not in this iteration, but for sort of a compensation governance policy that's very high level and leaves some of the detail that seems to be in these to administrative. I wonder if there's a line there, but other than that, yeah, it's really exciting for people in governance, I guess. Maybe no one else, but glad to see this work happening. Thank you.
Yeah, we really are a bunch of nerds, aren't we? I support the staff recommendation. All the proposed changes make total sense to me. And I think that this project is off to a really great start with where we're at this point. Cleaning up outdated policies is for sure a worthwhile exercise. And just getting this initiative started for me has left me feeling like a legislative weight has already been lifted off of the institution. And there's like a movie playing in my head of clearing cobwebs in a poorly lit storage room, making this happen. And so cool to read through and see former Administrator Bill Bloxham's name, or William Bloxham. He was my neighbor when I was 8. Our Chief Foot might remember the Bloxham family as well, lived just up the street from us. Good. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, and that takes us to lunch break. And we'll be coming back, reconvening here at 1:15. And so I'm looking to staff, are we now going to move to close? Is that our next step before we actually break? Okay, so staff, our council, motion to close, moved by Councillor Pettingill, seconded by Councillor Greenlaw. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Now we need a motion to terminate, right? This meeting? No, we'll
recess.
do that later. Okay, yes, well, 4:15 we do that. So 1:15, we are back here. Thank you.